The best way I thought to help understand these concepts is to actually go through it myself. I'm going to try and prepare a talk that I haven't prepared before this class. In other words, I'm going to go through it as you may go through it. So the TED Talk, the TEDx talk that I'm going to try to do in 4 minutes or less is the importance of interpersonal communication and sometimes foregoing texting or email and things like that. So I have to start by painting a picture. Presenting is like a journey. There are ups and downs and there's intrigue sometimes, but there's always a place we want people to get to, whether it's to inspire action or to learn something or to perceive the world differently. And we have to start with that end goal in mind so that all of the pieces move towards that end goal. When you start with the end in mind, the audience then understands a sense of progress. Very often presentations or the presenting of ideas to an audience can be blind. In other words, they don't know why you're telling us this stuff, and it may or may not be interesting to them. If there's an end goal in mind, it actually makes people more patient at the slow bits. So the structure is really important. How are you going to start? What's that frame that will get you going, right? Now, there's no right way to do this, but what I've found is that the best way to do it is to start with some sort of story, some sort of metaphor or analogy that captures the idea that you're going to be presenting about. And so in my own life, I've been at dinner with people where we're having a wonderful time and they just pick up their phone and start typing. And I feel kind of stupid and I sort of start looking around. And as we all tend to do, when someone else picks up their phone, we pick up our phones because we want something to do while they're doing something. But it's that feeling. I remember that feeling that I had. If I feel that way when people do that to me, then it only follows that I make other people feel that way when I do those things. So now I'm starting to form a picture. You can see I'm starting to talk about the world that we would live in, the end state that I want to get to. So we can start off with something as basic and quite boring as imagine if. Imagine if you were to sit down with someone in a meeting and they hung on every word you said. So you can see what I'm trying to do. I'm actually talking about what the world would be like if that phone wasn't there. And so what you need to do is practice telling that story. Practice telling whatever story you're going to use for your presentation in a safe environment. Tell it to your friends, tell it to your family, tell it to your colleagues. Pay attention to the world around you. Pay attention to the people who would benefit or engage with whatever product or service you're trying to talk about. Over the years, I've learned that the best motivation to present an idea is to come with a spirit of giving. It's really funny, you can see this. When someone has something to sell, when they want something from you, they want you to sign up for their Facebook, join their Facebook fan page or become one of their Twitter followers or buy my product or invest in my company. The way they present is about themselves. They're selling all the time, and it's actually off-putting. Unless they're selfishly motivated people in the audience, in which case it's a transaction. It's not actually something inspiring. But when someone shows up with the desire to give, to share an idea, to share a perspective, to share a new product, to share a new way of looking at something, people are much more receptive. Though there may eventually be some sort of reward for the presenter, showing up with the desire to give is actually the best way to achieve that. And the amazing thing is when you show up wanting nothing in return, when you show up to share what you've learned, to share what you know, to present what you've discovered, to share your idea, your perspective, whatever it is, with no desire for anything in return but to share this idea, people become fans, people become curious for more, and that's when the ideas of trust and cooperation start to evolve. So all presenters, regardless of what industry they're in, when you show up with the intention to give, the desire to give, it immediately makes the presentation vastly more effective. Very often people start talking about themselves. They start by offering their credentials. I've got 6 PhDs and I've run 7 Nobel Prizes and I teach at this esteemed university and I work with some of the biggest companies. In other words, they start by presenting their credentials as if to say, I'm qualified to tell you what you're about to hear. I found that that's actually not very helpful. Remember, when you're starting with a notion of giving, you're not going to start talking about yourself. right? So immediately those who start talking about themselves, it starts to become alienating for the audience. That stuff's important, but not to start a presentation. The other thing that I found is not helpful is to start with facts and figures. In other words, you're going to start by building a rational argument as to why this is important and why you should listen to me to get to this end state. Again, good stuff, better for later. Better, the facts and figures will come inside the jigsaw puzzle. They'll come later. They don't help capture people, their attention. It doesn't help by getting people to lean and say, this will be interesting, right? Because quite frankly, it goes right to the neocortex. It's a thinking thing, and it sort of starts to create, it's not emotional, it doesn't suck people in. So really the best way to get people to pay attention and to set up the scene that you're about to present is to start with some sort of story. Some sort of story that is emblematic of the end result.